The strange thing about our current national situation. A warm welcome to all those who wish to know something about it. It is particularly significant and strikingly relevant that today in India, everyone is totally free to say the most wicked thing, absolutely baseless thing about Rahul Gandhi. But if anyone dares to recognize what is good and truthful about him, what is meaningful and of promise in him, that is considered an act of impertinence, of disloyalty to the nation. I find this absolutely strange and worrisome because that's precisely something I would beg of you to understand. The foremost sign of social, ethical, and cultural decay is the allergy that a people share towards what is good, beautiful, and truthful. And correspondingly, the great fervor and excitement they feel towards what's corrupt, degraded, and putrefying. This is clearly an aberration, a pathological state, and no good can come out of it. When I decided to start this YouTube channel, if you like, I don't say this is a channel at all. My intention was to limit myself strictly to themes spiritual. I had absolutely no interest, even inclination to deal with anything that is remotely political. But in the last 6 months, as you would have noticed, very reluctantly, I have been handling themes that seem to be political. But if you really examine it carefully, you will find that my concern is still spiritual, even though the domain in which I undertake these reflections is political. So it is the spiritual within the political. Now, why do I do this? Why did I make an exception or a deviation, a seeming deviation from the original intention? That's what I need to explain to you in this video, and I request you to bear with me. Now, if you're familiar with the very interesting pioneering work done by the great German-American thinker, author, political philosopher, Hannah Arendt, A-R-E-N-D-T, Hannah Arendt, titled The Origins of Totalitarianism, you will find particularly two arguments or two insights that she provides in that very stimulating book of particular relevance to our context. First of all, she says that if you examine the rise of totalitarian regimes everywhere in the world, and if you examine the history of it, you will find that the way to the ascendancy of totalitarian regimes that crush people under their iron heels, had been paved for it by the moral decay of the people. Please pay attention to this. A totalitarian regime doesn't come into existence out of the blue. There is a process by which the path to the totalitarian oppression is paved by the people themselves. Of course, they do it unknowingly. When this is happening, they don't realize that this is happening, and they are contributing to it. According to Hannah Arendt, and I recommend this book to you, you can download it free of cost from the net, Origins of Totalitarianism. The indifference of a people towards ethical standards, or rather, their eager cooperation with whatever is corrupt, whatever is aggressive, whatever is unjust and oppressive, destroying the very moral foundation of a society, according to Arendt, is an absolute precondition for the emergence of totalitarianism. And from my own experience over the last 30, 40 years, I can bear witness to the fact that the most authentic effect of the degradation and the depravity that overtakes a society is the oppressiveness that comes into being as far as people of good intention is concerned. That is to say, in a corrupt and degraded society, the suffering, the oppression that good people will have to endure grows day by day. If you are wicked, if you are perverse, if you are violent, unjust, boorish, lumpen, no problem. In fact, you may even be recognized and rewarded. But if you're a good person who insists on certain ethical, moral standards, who finds it difficult to compromise his ideals, and who believes in human goodness and the dignity of human beings, as well as the right to equality of all your fellow human beings, if you believe in the idea of universal brotherhood, the fact that we are all together members of the human family, and therefore no form of discrimination is acceptable to you, then you get into serious trouble. Serious trouble. I can vouchsafe this from my personal experience. I try to be fair, absolutely transparent in carrying out my responsibilities as the principal of St. Stephen's College. I refuse to entertain the greedy, covetous demands of the rich, the powerful, the elite, who always thought that they had a birthright to have their children and grandchildren admitted without merit to St. Stephen's College, and did everything possible to accomplish that goal. Some succeeded, many did not, but many tried. So when I became principal, the same thing was tried with me. And I fought it tooth and nail, not because I had anything against anyone, but because I felt that it was an insult to my personal dignity and integrity to have to compromise my ideals and values in order to entertain the aggressive covetousness of those who already have all the advantages and privileges. And they want to thrive at the expense of people who have had really no opportunities in this world. I found that completely unacceptable. And to the extent that I stuck to my ideals, principles, and ethical norms, I was quickly labeled as an enemy of the elite. And a massive, all-round war was unleashed on me. If you want to know the details of this, please read my memoir titled On a Stormy Course. The title itself is suggestive. From that, you will understand how corrupt and depraved our society is. This society does not allow you the freedom to serve according to universal values and principles. Now, if you stick to your principles and if you stick to your moral standards, the powerful in the society who think they have a right to anything and everything, they consider you as a hindrance to their intentions, their interests, and they turn brutal and try to eliminate you in any which way they can. What I experienced on a small scale, Rahul Gandhi experienced on a very large scale. From 2004 onwards, ever since this young man at that time, he was a young lad of 30, 31, the oppression that he had to put up with, the orchestrated plan to malign him, to ridicule him, to caricature him, and to destroy him altogether, to demoralize him completely. I can understand then the BJP or whoever comes to a conclusion that Rahul Gandhi is a pappu based on his performance. I can jolly well understand that. And I would certainly endorse that. But to say that somebody is a pappu even before he gets going is not an objective stand that's taken, but it's an outrage, a recrudescence of prejudice, brutal prejudice. And the rest of the country is expected to imbibe it, to swallow it. If you don't, then you will be pilloried, you will be ridiculed, you will be attacked, you will be intimidated. So, my dear friends, I request you to understand that where we are today confronts us with an alarming reality. Namely, we have lost the freedom to recognize that which is true, good, and beautiful. And we have come under coercion and compulsion to fall in love with that which is wicked, violent, perverse, and ugly. If this is a situation that doesn't get you worried, what else will? It was for this reason that I decided that merely as my small contribution towards upholding the truth and endorsing what is right and righteous, I would tell the truth about Rahul Gandhi because, for better for worse, I happen to know him. I happen to know him from the time that he was a student in St. Stephen's College. I was not the principal at that time. I was only a faculty member in the English department. But I used to see this young lad, and I used to watch from a distance very critically how he would conduct himself. And I tell you, for as long as he was in college, he conducted himself in the most exemplary fashion. You ask anyone who was in college at that time, you will not hear one negative word about him. Everybody would have a good word to say about him. That was how he conducted himself. Of course, at that time, he did not prove himself to be an intellectual giant. I readily accept it. But he was a fantastic human being. And I attach more value to human goodness than to the expansion of the brain, though I value the latter also. So, for me, for a whole campaign to be launched in order to show Rahul Gandhi as a pappu, even before he got started, was nothing but an exercise in inhumanity, calculated hostility, and soulless villainy. But I kept quiet. I shouldn't have, but I kept quiet. I kept quiet because when I retired from service in 2016, I took a vow. And that vow was that I would never again meddle with politics. I did meddle with issues political for a period of time. I was even a quasi-political activist. Together with Swami Agnivesh, we launched a movement called Adhyatma Jagran Manch, and the idea was to spread general awareness among as many people as possible about the danger that communalism holds out to the health and wholeness of Indian democracy. And we covered 3 states, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Haryana, Delhi. We conducted hundreds of meetings. That was the time when I came under the obligation or the imperative need to give speeches in Hindi. Quickly, I had to learn a language. My Hindi was non-existent. But in less than 2 weeks, I reached a stage where I could give, somewhat confidently, a good speech in Hindi. And Swami Agnivesh used to say that people responded more to my Hindi than to his Hindi, and his Hindi was poetical, absolutely superlative. But somehow, people clicked more with my broken Hindi than to his mastery of the Hindi language. Though Hindi was not Swami Agnivesh's mother tongue. He was born in Andhra Pradesh, Srikakulam. So his mother tongue was Telugu. At that time, his name was Vepa Sham Rao. When he became a sannyasi, he changed his name, as is usually the custom, and he became Swami Agnivesh. So I had taken this decision never to deal with anything political. Therefore, I kept quiet. But this went on and on and on and on till about 6, 7 months ago. I took a decision. I felt that if I have any spiritual sensitivity and responsibility at all, I cannot turn a blind eye to this evident sign of our social ethical degradation, and that I should do whatever I can to affirm, to hail, to celebrate whatever is good, true, and beautiful. And there is no point in living in a situation where one is not free to recognize what is good. The most bottom line of human freedom is the freedom to recognize what is good. Even if you don't have the freedom to cast a vote, even if you don't have the freedom to move around, I would say that the bottom line of freedom is the freedom to recognize that which is good, that which is true. But then what happens is, when a society is paralyzed with fear, the vast majority of the people voluntarily renounce even this bottom line freedom, the freedom to recognize what is good. Therefore, I found that this orchestrated campaign to malign this young man who was showing signs of promise was an outbreak of collective villainy, and therefore I had to bear witness to the truth. I want to make one thing absolutely clear here. I don't believe it is my duty. I don't think I have any duty whatsoever to support Rahul Gandhi, and I'm not supporting Rahul Gandhi at all. What I'm doing through these videos is to bear witness to the truth I know, I see, and I understand. Because I believe that in the first place, it's a celebration of my freedom. Secondly, it's the duty that I owe to my country, particularly in light of Article 51A of the Indian Constitution. So, the good qualities in a man, should they be valued? Should they be acknowledged? Should they be recognized? Now, the strange thing today is, it is considered an acceptable exercise to say the most rotten lies about Rahul Gandhi. He is this, he is that, he is a friend of China, he has girlfriends here, there, and everywhere. He wears expensive t-shirts, and his heart is not with India. He goes here and there. He goes to Malaysia. Anything and everything. If he looks to the left, it's a problem. Look, if he looks to the right, it's a problem. If he shuts his eyes, that also is a problem. If he opens his eyes, that's a problem. Now, is this fair? Is this fair? Now, for example, less than 2 weeks ago, the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, Yogi Adityanath, comes to Bihar and calls Rahul Gandhi a monkey. Not only Rahul Gandhi, Akhilesh Yadav, Tejasvi Yadav, and Rahul Gandhi, 3 monkeys. Now, I ask you, on what basis can they be called monkeys? I did a video on this, therefore I'm not going to repeat the contents of that video. Absolutely arbitrary, totally baseless. I can understand if the person who tries to label these 3 young politicians monkeys have a better credential than them, either in looks or otherwise. So the situation today is that a certain section of the society is free to say, do whatever they want. Nobody can question them. And also the rest of the society, not only that they're obliged to accept whatever is done by members of this camp, they also should renounce their freedom to recognize anything that is good in an individual not belonging to that camp. Now, this is a height of oppression. And what underlies the legitimacy of this oppression is a complete moral collapse of a society. And I'm doing this video to plead with everyone to recognize the great danger towards which we are moving. If Hannah Arendt's thesis is right, that the moral degradation of the people will pave the way towards the rise of totalitarian forms of government, and therefore democracy will decline into dictatorship, then you and I, who value democracy and the freedoms and privileges and opportunities guaranteed by democracy as enshrined in the Constitution of our constitutional democracy, then we have a reason to be concerned. We are concerned citizens. So, my only purpose in dealing with any issue pertaining to Rahul Gandhi is not to support him personally. I have no need to do it. I have no interest in doing it. It is not my intention. My intention is to alert everyone to the fact that we all have a responsibility to do whatever we can to safeguard the health and wholeness of Indian democracy. And the health of a democracy will depend entirely on the ethical sanity, the moral robustness of that society. Because after all, it is a society that nurtures individuals. If you want to have a true democratic leader emerging from a society, that society must have an ethical, moral foundation. From a corrupt, degraded society, a good leader cannot emerge. A depraved society will only produce dictatorships or people who have no respect for the rights and sentiments of others. So, we have to realize that simply by keeping quiet, simply by endorsing the assertions of the juggernaut of political unilateralism, we could be indirectly aiding and abetting the murder of Indian democracy. And by the time we realize that this is the case, it may prove too late, as it often happens in history. As Hegel, the German philosopher, wrote, human beings are like owls. They open their eyes only after the sun has gone down. Wisdom comes too late. Therefore, my humble effort is to invite you to realize what actually is at play in the present context. Should I or shouldn't I have the freedom to recognize something good in an individual, whether that is Rahul Gandhi or Narendra Modi or Pinarayi Vijayan or Kejriwal or Prashant Kishore, whoever, it doesn't matter. I should be free to recognize whatever is good and true and beautiful in anyone and everyone. In the same manner, I should have also the freedom to reject that which is violent, oppressive, and subhuman, no matter in which quarter it exists. If that fundamental freedom is already compromised, then I have to tell you that we are in a very dangerous situation. So my single and singular purpose in doing these videos is to alert everyone to this fact. And that fact is the responsibility that each one has to do whatever we can to protect the foundations of our democratic structure of governance, as well as to reinforce and enhance the ethical, moral fiber of our society. And that takes courage. No matter what other qualities you have, if you don't have courage, then all your good qualities and intentions will become neutral, will be of no effect. What is needed in times of crisis is courage, courage of conviction. And we should go about our task without fear or favor, with malice towards none and goodwill towards all, as that old phrase goes. And I thought I would do this video to spell out clearly where I stand. I don't care who rules this country, but I do care that we are governed justly and wisely. That's all that I'm concerned about. And my standard, my yardstick for measuring the goodness of governance is whether or not the people in authority, people at the helm of affairs, are responsive to the needs of the poor, the deprived, the have-nots. The second concern I have is whether or not they respect the spirit and ideals of the Indian Constitution. And finally, whether or not they accept the bottom line ideals of being human, particularly the idea that we all belong together in the human family. That's all that I'm concerned about. So I dare say this is not a political agenda, this is a spiritual agenda. And therefore, I wholeheartedly agree with Mahatma Gandhi that it's a dangerous thing to separate spirituality from politics. Then you have politics without principles, which Gandhi said is an evil, and I would say it's a supreme evil. And my attempt here is to try and avoid India tumbling over into the black, dark alleys of that supreme evil, politics without principles. Jai Hind.